Coaches across the country used the Coachpad this past season to be more efficient with their scout card prep on the weekends as well as when out on the practice field working with their scout teams. Whether you're a coach using a computer program to create cards or drawing them by hand, the Coachpad is for you. Never printing paper or stuffing a binder, clearly seeing scout cards outdoors in the bright sun, and using the coach pad on game days, syncing diagrams from the press box to the sideline were some of the features coaches enjoyed this season. This offseason, get your coach pad at thecoachpad.com to get your program ready for next season. Thecoachpad.com. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Downbacker podcast. Today we have the offensive coordinator at Tatum High School in the great state of Texas, Jeremy Kubiak. Coach, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
No problem. Appreciate you. You're one of the ones who I put out the flyer for flexbone and triple coaches that kind of responded. Before we get started, kind of how do you end up as the OC at Tatum?
Oh, it's been like it's my 20th year of coaching. I was at Wascom for 12 years. I've been at Tatum. This is I guess 2.5 years. I came to Tatum in April of 2023, or sorry, 2022. Before that, I was at Wascom as the offensive coordinator there for 12 years. We Our head coach got the Tatum job and brought a bunch of the staff with him there to Tatum. And after looking at some stuff for me, I decided Tatum would be probably the best option of what was out there. And so I went with Coach Keeling there to Tatum. Before I was at Wascom, I was at Bloomington as the special teams coordinator and whatever. There was 6 of us on staff there as coach, so we kind of did everything from junior high to high school, and I was coaching junior high basketball as well. And then I was supposed to coach baseball in the spring, but Coach Keeling got the job at Wascom there in January, and I went with him there. And prior to that, I was at Copper's Cove for a couple of years as a junior high coach there when I was first getting started there. And that was a good place to work at. I went from the 2 years before that, I was at Pleasant Grove in Texarkana, which was a small school. Well, at least it was at the time. Now it's grown a little bit, but we had 12 coaches on staff there. And I remember our first meeting at Copper's Cove, which was a 5A school, 6A now in Texas. We had 42 coaches in a meeting room, and from 7th grade to 12th grade, so we had 2 junior highs and then the high school staff. And I just remember sitting there going from a staff of 12 coaches to just walked in coach after coach after coach after coach walking in this meeting room. And I started counting. I was like, "Where's 42 of us in here? This is amazing." We were sitting on the floor all over the place. And but it was fun because we were really good. We My first year there, we went to the state championship. We had some guy named Robert Griffin III playing quarterback for us in high school, so that was fun to watch. And I think I remember looking at a team picture one time, and off of that team, I think we had 12 guys play Division I football. So we played. Yeah, it helps out a lot. I know a lot of coaches like to say their scheme is awesome, but 12 guys playing Division I football helps out a lot. And makes any scheme look really, really good. Especially when one guy goes on to win the Heisman Trophy and was the 3rd pick in the draft and was the rookie of the year in the NFL. He was a pretty good player. The crazy thing was, though, when he was in high school, he probably sorry, Robert, if you watch this, and you probably don't even really remember me because I was just junior in high school, but he probably wasn't even the best player on the team. We had a guy who played linebacker. We had a couple guys who went to Baylor and played defensive tackle. We had running back that went Division I, and then we had a wide receiver that went to TCU and then played for the Jets for about 4 or 5 years. I mean, we were pretty loaded. And then prior to that, I was like I said, I was at Pleasant Grove for a couple years, and then before that, I actually coached in my hometown for 1 year from Granbury, Texas, which is 30 minutes outside of Fort Worth. At the time when I graduated there was 2 stoplights in the town, and it was pretty small. Now it's kind of just part of the DFW Metroplex now. So that's my coaching scheme or coaching journey over 20 years. This will be my 21st year of being a Texas high school football coach. My dad was a high school football coach for 30 years. I grew up in the field house. It's pretty much the only thing I've ever wanted to do, and pretty much the only thing I ever really knew or thought I'd at least be good at. I remember, in fact, when I was sitting around a freshman in high school, and we were talking about, what we were going to do when we got older, and what we thought the other person would be when we got in. And we finally, my turn got to me, and I was like, all right, what do you think I'm going to be? And like 5 guys at one time just say coach. I mean, that's what you're going to do. And I was like, yeah, pretty sure. So they were right. I was right. And this is the only job I've ever had. And it's the only job I've ever wanted to have. And it's really fun. It's been great. I've had some success. I've been part of some 1-9 seasons. I've been part of some 16-0 seasons. In 2014 and 15 at Wascom, we went back-to-back state championships, and had a lot of fun. Had some good players there too. that helped out a lot winning the state championship, as it usually does. Had a bunch of guys go play college football off of those teams, and it was really fun. But I had never run the on I grew up in a multi system. That's what my dad ran. I guess what people call a pro style offense now, and or probably did back then too. And when I was at Granbury, that's what we ran. And then I went to Pleasant Grove, and we were more of a spread, I guess you would call it, but we ran it probably more out of the spread than we threw it. We were gun 2-back and H-back stuff, kind of, before that became the thing. We were not going to say we were cutting edge or anything, but not a whole lot of teams are doing that. We started doing that, had a little bit of success there doing that. And then when I went to Copper's Cove, we were a pro style offense. And then at Bloomington, we were spread. And then when we got the job at Wascom was not very good. In fact, the previous 4 years before we got there, they were, I think, in 36 and hadn't made the playoffs in 20 years or something like that. And after our first year there, we started to evaluate what we had. We went 3-7 running that gun 2-back stuff and spread type look. And we started to evaluate what we had and what we had coming up. And we started to realize, one, we weren't ever going to be the biggest team, what we had coming up. We did have a bunch of kids that could run in the lower levels, and but we didn't have a big offensive lineman set, and we didn't have a quarterback that we thought could just stand back there and sling it around. So we went back and researched. In fact, our Whitney Keeling, our head coach that was at Wascom and at Tatum now too, actually typed in a Google search, what offense can you run if you don't have any offensive linemen? And just typed that into Google. And the first one that popped up was the A11, which was out of California, which is like where everything's a fake punt and everybody's eligible for a pass, and you step guys on the line and step guys off and try to just, get people open by alignment. And he said, well, what's this? And I said, I've never heard of it. So we started research. Well, that's illegal in Texas. You can't do that. Then they made the rule. You had to have 5 ineligible players. And maybe they do that if there's some A11 guys out there. I don't know. But we didn't research it too much. But then the next offense that popped up was the flexbone. And we were like, okay. And, we'd always, growing up, I'd always watched the service academies and bowl games and stuff, and just thought that offense was cool. And was interested in it, the option and stuff. And then my dad actually played quarterback at Sam Houston State in college, and they ran the split back veer. And so I had a little bit of an understanding about it just from listening to him talking, growing up and stuff, and telling Whitney, I said, well, I know a little bit about the options. So we researched schools around us that ran it, and Harding popped up. And when we were at Pleasant Grove, we actually had a kid go to Harding that had just graduated from there. So we had a little in there with the coaching staff, and we reached out to them, and they said, yeah, sure, come up, we'll teach it to you. And so me and Coach Keeling went up, drove the 4.5 hours to Searcy, Arkansas, and sat there for 2 days listening to Kenny Wheaton and the offensive staff there at Harding talk about the option. And they had just put it in the year before. And so we got kind of in on the ground floor there at Harding, and they were talking about transitioning from a spread team to a flexbone team and everything that entailed. And so, I just wrote down notes just on a legal pad. And I still have it. I'll go back and look at it sometimes and just go, good Lord, I can't believe I wrote that much stuff. And we were only there for 2 days. And I came back with, 20 pages of notes, and 10 pages of the notes were mid-triple. And Kenny Wheaton teaching us the mid-triple option. And I just remember I'd never heard of that play before. I had never seen anybody run that play before, and I just remember looking at my notes going, there's no way this play works. There's not a chance this play could work. You can't block. You can't not block the two linemen on the line of scrimmage and not just get hit right now. And so we started going back and looking at it, and I was just like, if it did work, it's a pretty good play. And they showed us a film on it of it just hitting for 50 and 60 yards. And I was just like, God, God. And so we came back, and that's the first play we put in, and just researching it, or just keep teaching these kids this and researching what did good and what did bad, and teaching points that Kenny had taught us and the staff there at Harding. And I was trying to teach the information to our coaches that Kenny had taught us, and we were doing such a good job of it that our head coach called Kenny and said, "You got to come down here and teach this to our coaching staff, because we're not getting it. It's kind of like making a copy of a copy." And so he came down there for a couple more days and was like, "Yeah, y'all are doing this good. Y'all aren't doing this good." And he ran through it with our kids a little bit, and then we started learning it. And the first year we ran it, we went 5-5, and that was the first non-losing season at Wascom in, like, I don't know, they said 12 years or something like that. It was crazy. And then the next year we went 7-3, and we were scoring a lot of points. We just weren't stopping a whole lot of people. That year we went 5-5. I remember we lost a game like 64-54. Our quarterback rushed for like 290 yards, something in the game. The only problem was the quarterback for City rushed for like 310. And so we didn't stop them. We did make the playoffs first 2 years, and then the third year that we were trying to run the flexbone, though, we knew we had some kids coming that were fast, and we're starting to figure out how to run the offense. And we had a really good quarterback, really, really good option quarterback. And we went 14-1 and got beat in the semifinals. And we had 4 kids on that team rush for 1,000 yards, which at the time in Texas was only, I think, the second time they said something had ever happened like that. And then the next year we went 15-1 and won the state championship. And the next year we went 16-0 and went back-to-back state championships, and had a 3-year span where we went 45-2. And a lot of that was because nobody could stop mid-triple. And coaches be like, "What's that?" I thought it was the greatest play ever after we started running it, and I still think it's the best play in football right now. I've given clinic talks over it. I've put that on Twitter as a joke sometimes, where it's like, what football deal has you like this, and the guy's in front of the firing squad, and there's everybody staring at him, or has a sword to his neck. And my deal is always mid-triple is the best play in football, is my response to that.
Okay. Let's expand that. Like, obviously, for people who, let's start here. For people who don't know what mid-triple is, what is mid-triple?
So mid-triple is inside veer, but you bump it down off, instead of inside veer option off the last man on the line of scrimmage, or the first thing head up outside the tackle, which is how we were taught it. Mid-triple, you bump it down one person. And so the give pull read is what we say is the first person place side of the center, whether the guy's in a shade, whatever coaches call a shade, or a one technique, or a 2-eye, or a 2 head up on the guard, and 3 bump out that way. And so number 1, the give pull read is the first thing placed out of the center, and the pitch read is the next person out. And then, for all you option football coaches out there, you non-option football coaches out there, you might have heard of the count of 3. And so ours is, number 1 is the give pull read on a triple play. Number 2 is the keep pitch read, and number 3 is the guy that you block. And so if you're playing a split defense and you're running inside veer, number 1 would be the defensive end if he was a 4 or 5, outside shade of the tackle. And then the pitch read would be number 2 would be probably the outside linebacker, or would be the outside linebacker. And then number 3 for us would be the free safety. So if using that same defense, a split defense, or 4-2-5 or 4-4, whatever you want to call it, number 1 for us is the defensive tackle. Whether he's in a 1 technique, whether he's in a 2, whether he's in a 3, he's number 1. And my coaching point on that for a kid is the closer the number 1 read is to you, the more likely it's going to be a keep. And so if he's in a 2-eye or a 1 or a shade off the center, we're gonna keep that, and then we're gonna pitch off the next person. The farther away he is from you, if he gets the 3 technique wider, then it's more than likely going to read give to the fullback. If the guy's in a head up two, then it's got to be a true read. You got to watch and see what he's doing because you can do a lot of stuff from a two technique. And then the pitch read would be the next person out, like I said. So that defensive end would be the pitch read, and then number three would be the outside linebacker that the slot is responsible for blocking.
Okay. Now, like if you get like an odd front, would you count the nose as typically? And I know some of this is game planning, but is the nose technically a 0 or a 1 at that point?
You want to try to manipulate the nose if they have a nose. Ideally, if your center is good enough to face the nose by himself, if he's in a head up 0 technique, then he is not in the count. So it's the first thing play side of the center. If you can drop down a tight end set or a tackle over set and get a team to shade their nose guard and put him in that shade, then he becomes part of the count. Ideally, in a perfect world, you would like to run away from the shade. It makes it a lot easier sometimes on your blocking scheme. And so a lot of times, if you're playing an odd front defense and the team had a nose and they bump down to a shade, then you're going to get maybe a 4-eye or a 3 on the back side, and it opens up that lane for your fullback to run through a lot easier if that nose goes from the head up to a shade on the strong side. So if you can manipulate the nose that way and put him in the count, then you can do that. And a lot of times by putting him in the count to the strong side, you can take him out of the count to the weak side. And a lot of times it'll make it easier for you. But we've always had a pretty good center. For the last 3 years, we had our defensive line coach's son was our center, and he was 6 foot, 300 pounds, and was an all-state power lifter. And so we didn't have a whole lot of problem blocking the nose guard. We've had some years where we've had problems blocking the nose guard, and we've had to double team and triple team and false key him, depending if we think the nose is reading the center and trying to do things like that, then you can give him some looks where you release the center backside and he just kind of stands there, goes with him, and then the backside guard comes through and slices through his kneecap and blows him up, and it reads give a lot. And so manipulating the nose is a big part of mid triple, especially if the guy is really good. But that's our number one play pretty much since 2013. For a decade, mid triple has been our number one play that we run. And so we can't just go into a game and say, look, we can't run that play. That's a huge part of our offense. It can be on a yearly basis, it's about 10 to 15% of our offense. And so we can't just say, oh, we can't run that. And so you do try to manipulate the nose, whether it be formation wise or some type of blocking scheme wise, to get the play to work effectively.
Okay. I mean, why? Besides the fact that you don't need to block half the D line, what? I mean, why do you think it's become such a prevalent part of your package? Like, obviously, we had this talk before we started. I've talked to a lot of coaches recently, option wise, and mid triples slowly going up all their lists, college or high school. And instead of running a lot more outside veer or inside veer or even mid double, mid triple has kind of become the go to. Why do you think it's is it because of how people are playing defense these days? Is it just being better taught and better understood? Is it various adjustments? Why do you think it's kind of gotten its surgence that it has?
Well, kind of the smart aleck answer I would say is because it works. It works really, really well. But no, because I think because of how fast it hits, especially the pitch, the third phase of mid triple is the pitch. And that if you're pitching it out to a kid that can run and get him out on the edge, then and as quick as it can, hit, then that's really good. And that's the explosive part of it right there. And then just the grind of you give it to the fullback, you give it to the fullback, he gets 4 yards, he gets 4 yards, he gets 4 yards, and just kind of lulls the defense to sleep. And then how disciplined are you? Okay, well, take the dive, take the dive, take the dive. Well, coach, the guy's keeping it and pitching it. So and then they don't take the dive, and then the dive hits for 60 yards. And the big thing, like we had a coach a couple of years ago, that had never run the option before. And he was an O-line guy. He's a great offensive line coach and helped out our O-line guy a lot and brought some stuff and some different looks. And he told me, he said, I've, been talked to staffs that you guys have played, and mid triple is like nobody knows it. Like they all think you're running inside veer because you're pitching the ball and because you're running a true triple read, and everybody thinks you're running the inside veer. And so, the defensive end has been told, well, if you're on block, you take the dive. Well, if we're running mid triple and that defensive end and defensive tackle are taking the dive, well, then that opens up your quarterback. And then so that guy that's supposed to be defending the pitch now that thinks he's, that you're trying to block with your slot, and thinks, oh, well, I'm a pitch player, and so maybe he's a quarterback player, and he runs the quarterback and he kind of blocks himself by running at the quarterback or running at the pitch. It's going to open up your pitch player or your quarterback up to be very explosive play. And so, if one team thinks you're running a totally different play than what you're running schematically, then that's going to help out tremendously. And a lot of with the way we block it on one of our tags is that O-line coach I was telling me, he goes, that is the greatest play ever because you set everybody up to go, one way, go inside or whatever. You can formation it to where your strength is right and you're running mid triple left. He goes, so you got everybody on your right, you're running left, and everybody on the left side is arcing. And then you're pitching the ball to the fastest kid on the field. And I was like, yeah, that's when you put it that way, it's a pretty good play. And we were up there. We were up there actually in a scrimmage. He was in the box with me to help our O-line guy out. And he still hadn't learned a whole lot. It's the first scrimmage, and we were teaching him everything, and he was picking it up. He just, with terminology and stuff, he was coming back, and remember it was third and long or something like that. And he goes, hey, Coob, what's that one play where you pitch it out there to DJ and he's running out there and everybody's arcing out? It's like mid triple. Yeah, that's good. We want to run that one. And so you can run mid triple on 1st and 10. We've ran mid triple on 3rd and 21, and it's hit for a first down. So you can call it at any time, any situation on the field if you feel like your quarterback can pitch the ball. If your quarterback can't pitch the ball, then there's no reason to ever run the play. And so you got to put a lot of work into it and going into it. And you got to put a lot of work on it before you actually get out there on the field and run it. And, you kind of laughed at that. We had one year where our quarterback couldn't pitch the ball. And it was crazy. And he had been the JV quarterback and been the junior high quarterback. It wasn't like we just grabbed an athlete and said, hey, go run this play. And then we started to go back and look at the JV films, and we said, nobody has ever made him pitch the ball. I mean, he was keeping it running, and the JV was winning for 2 years. They won the district back to back. We went like 19-1 or something on the JV, and we just thought, man, he's really, really good. And, you don't really study JV film a whole lot. And so we were like, so I went back and watched it. I was like, why can't he pitch the ball? And I was like, nobody has ever made him pitch the ball. Nobody. And so his junior year, he's playing quarterback. He can't pitch the ball. I mean, it's all over the place. And I was just like, oh my God. And so we really almost, we had to scrap it that whole year. About 3 games into it, we're just like, what? And so we had to run like the buck sweep to get the ball to our slots on the edge. And we're just running rocket toss to him. And then his that off season of his junior going to senior year, that kid worked harder than any kid I've ever worked around just to pitch the ball 4 yards, just to be able to pitch the balls. And the next year, man, he was awesome at it. He was great. And we went all the way to the regional final and then got beat by the eventual state champion regional final. But I mean, he worked so hard just to be able to pitch the ball 4 to 5 yards and hit the pitch man in the face, over and over and over again. And he finally got it, and the play took off again. We're like, all right, we're good again. And so it correlated big time to that year before. We went 4-7. Well, why were we 4-7? Well, we couldn't run mid triple very effectively. The next year, we go 9-5 and are back to scoring 45 points a game. Well, why did that happen? Oh, because we could pitch the ball in mid triple. And that's a big part of it, because once you hit that pitch, I mean, there's nothing prettier to me. It's a handful of things in the world than catching the pitch to the fastest kid on the field and him just hitting it for about 60, running straight down the sideline for a touchdown. It's pretty awesome. And you can formation it up and do a bunch of stuff, and that twirl motion, it gives you a bunch of deals. And you can false motion some people if you got people running with your safeties. safeties running with your slots. You can false motion them and hit it back the other way. And we have a tag for it. If you've seen it on Twitter, it's called flow motion, to where we'll dummy motion our slot back the other way. Harding ran it a bunch against the Colorado school in the national championship game because they were playing too high safety look and their safeties were manned up on the slots, which is a pretty common thing. And so anytime the slot went in motion, that play side safety went with them. Well, they're running them back left and running mid triple right and hitting that pitch. And if you got a kid that can run back there and there's nobody on that side of the field, it's a pretty good play. I remember the first time we ran it, I mean, it hit bigger than Dallas, and our receivers coach, he goes, that was like running a junior high reverse. He said there was nobody out there. And our quarterback, he goes, Coach, I didn't know what to do. There wasn't anybody out there. And I said, well, run. He said, that's what I did. He hit for like a 40-yard touchdown. He goes, there was nobody there. And so then we ran it again and it hit again. And he came to the sideline. He goes, well, I pitched at that time because I wanted TK to score. I said, well, that was very democratic of you there, Raymond. Good job, bud. And so you can manipulate formations, you can manipulate defenses. And like I said, if that defensive end has been told all week, hey, if you're unblocked, you take that out. Well, he crashes down through two gaps if you're running mid triple and just opens up the edge just bigger than Dallas.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, because if they're thinking it's inside veer, is his path any different than normal midline or for your fullback, or is it still straight down the midline?
Straight down the midline. And so on our inside veer, we're hitting an inside for the guard.
Yeah.
On mid double, mid triple, we're running, telling you run through the quarterback's back. And the quarterback's job is to get out of the way. Your job is to run through straight downhill and step. And so, like out of his 3-point stance, we say place your hand with your foot or step on your thumb. And so if we're going right, then take your right foot and step on your thumb, put your left foot up and make your pocket. Yeah, it's your job. Do not. And a lot of kids, when you're teaching it, younger kids, they don't trust that. They're like, well, coach, he's in the way. Yeah, well, he's going to move. I promise you, he's not going to be there. And so if you do have a fullback that's getting just that one step off, that first step is just crucial. If he steps in A gap, well, then his second step's going to take him wider in A gap, and then the ball's going to be on the hip of the B back instead of right on his gut. And if that happens, then that defensive end can recover, is what we've kind of looked at too. That defensive end can recover a little bit better because then the quarterback's reaching and you're taking them down. You want the defense to come to you. You don't want to go to the defense. And so you have to hit that straight downhill to the center, so that goes back to what we were talking about before. If you're playing a team that has a really good nose guard, then you might have to manipulate some stuff to be able to get that guy out of the way. Because if you're just getting stoned at the line of scrimmage, then that's a problem. Because if they think, well, my nose guard is better than your center, so we're going to have him control the center, we're going to have that defensive tackle step up and make it read give, and just have your B back running, into the butt of the center. And so we've had tags before where we're like, all right, well, we're going to double team this up. And that guy's really good. Then we're going to triple team up with both the guards and the center and try to put that guy in the lap of the stack linebacker or the Mike linebacker if you're playing a 50 look. Or you can, what some people call slice the nose. And so slicing the nose is a technique to where your center will release to the backside A gap, and he's going up to the backside linebacker, and that play side guard comes through there and just smokes and puts his helmet on his backside knee, or not the back of his knee, but if you're going right, so your right guard is trying to get that nose guard's right kneecap. And if you do get a nose guard that is, trying to not let that center get up to the linebacker and is engaged with him and putting his hands on him and trying to run him down the line of scrimmage and not paying attention to what's going on, and that guard comes through there, and it can get pretty nasty. And if you do that a handful of times, then slows that nose guard down a little bit to where he's not just bull charging through, and he's got his head on a swivel a little bit. And now you got him playing on his heels, and now it does loosen up the defense a little bit. And then you can tag it with the different. All right, we're not going to slice the nose this time. We're just going to double team. All right, we're going to double team with a play side guard and the center up to the linebacker. Or, so we have another tag for we're going to triple team it with both guards in the center up to linebacker level, and you guys come off to your linebacker, and then that opens it up for your B back. Give him a little path. All he needs is, we tell that center, we need that nose guard to move back 1.5 to 2 yards, and that will open up the cut lane for the B back there. But that B back has the trust that nose guard's going to be out of the way, so he has a path to run.
Yeah. Now with that, like, I mean, okay, so is your guard always going down, or will he arc or release the backer too? Like how does the play side guard and play side tackle, like, I don't think obviously every rule, but like the general gist, what is the pass and how they approach that?
So the guard's path is always the same. He's going to veer release the defensive tackle, whether the guy's in a 1 or the guy's in a 3. His path is he's going to step inside. He's going to flip his hands. He's going to clear, veer and clear up to the next level. Well, if the guy's in a 1 technique, you're not going to get through that. And so we tell him basically, you're doing that to protect the mesh of the B back. So you can't loop around a 1 technique and just let our B back just get sacrificed and just run suicide dive in there against a 1 technique. So he is what we call protecting the mesh, and he is trying to slice through across the guy's instinct and cross just read the beat. And our quarterback way I teach it is you still read this, but 9 out of 10 times you're going to keep the ball if the guy's in a 1 technique. If if the defensive tackle is in a 2 or a 3, it makes it really easy for the guard. Is you stay low, you get through, you veer up to the linebacker, right there. Quarterback reads the 2 or 3. If we've changed our rule from the shoulder and shoulders turn, you keep it, because a lot of time we got a lot of defense linemen, they're false keeners that were turning our shoulders, but they weren't coming down the line of scrimmage. And so our quarterback said, well, his shoulders were turning, thought he was tackling the B back, and then he comes off and he tackles us at the line of scrimmage. So we changed our rule to everything is a give until it's not. And the only way it's not is if the number 1 read is tackling the B back. If the B back is not getting tackled, you give him the ball. If he is getting tackled, then you pull it and you run the play. And so the guys in defense tackles in 2 or 3, then we veer up the linebacker, you read him out and go on with the play. The tackle does have different tags. And so depending on the defense that we are facing, because the guard and the tackle are responsible for the play side linebacker. Well, if we're playing a split defense, then the tackle will veer through the 5 technique. Or even if the guy's in a 4 eye and they're pinching, then he's going to wash it down. Our quarterback's taught, if you have 2 gap defenders, which would be an A gap and a B gap defender, then we're going to pull pitch it really fast and get out on the edge. And that's when you go, look, all right, well, that guy's in a 1, so I'm probably going to keep it. That guy's in the 4 eye, so I'm going to pitch it. There's a handful of things, or really 1 or 2 things pretty much that can change that for him based on how defense plan. Just, if the guy's in a 4 eye and then they do some type of arc stump through linebacker and whatever, then we can change it up there if we need to. But the tackle has different tags, and so he's going to veer up here if we're playing this defense. If we're playing a different defense, and he's going to arc the defensive end, and he's going to arc and he's going to look inside to linebacker level. If they're running a stunt or something, and you go to arc, and they're like you're facing a 4-3 defense or a stack linebacker, just linebacker hip stack on that defensive end, and they blitz that linebacker through B gap. Well, when you arc out, if that defensive end runs with you, well, then hook him. All right. And so you have to work that a lot. That's a tough block for the tackle. And so you want your tackle to be a little bit smarter of a kid to be able to do that and recognize when that's happening. But, from your by your second step in the ground, you should know, all right, well, that guy pinched, so I'm going to work up to linebacker level. Oh, well, this guy's reading me and he's trying to run with me, so I'm going to hook him. In any sound defense, well, if your defensive end is going to be a C gap player, well, they're going to have a B gap player, whether it's a blitzing linebacker or they're going to scheme it up somebody where they're not going to not defend the B gap against us. And so if that defensive end becomes a C gap player, then you block him. If he doesn't, then you work up to the next level, and then that linebacker is probably going to be the C gap player. Then you're gonna get arced and get hooked on his outside shoulder. And so the tackles rule does change depending on what defense we're seeing on the triple. The guard's pretty much always the same.
Yeah. And then my last question for you on this, because I think you've probably given me more exact detail than I could have asked for. Is there any little technique or things that, like, because you talked about it, I mean, there's stuff when you brought down Wheaton that you guys were missing or weren't doing correctly. And so when you talk to other schools or watch other people run mid triple, is there any other little details you think that gets missed or that should be covered better or um, just little nuances that people might not realize?
If you think you're lacking in something, just get as much Harding video as you can. Get as much Harding video as you can. They run it, particularly mid dribble. They run it better than anybody. And the thing is you have to. The term that was taught to us when we learned it was major in the major. And so if mid triple is going to be your play, then you have to spend as much time as you can making sure that that play is going to work. And so if you see something being done, and most of the time for us, the high school level, it's pad level. And that's the thing that we are constantly working on is that your tackle wants to pop his head up really quick. And your guard wants to pop his head up really quick because the kids want to see. They want to see, well, coach, he was doing this or he was doing that. And you got to get them to trust. If you trust your training and you go through your steps and you go through your progression, it will work. And so a lot of time for us, I'll tell our line coach during the game is, hey, we're too high. Our heads are popping up way too fast. And if we're popping up way too fast and you're not playing with any leverage, then the defensive lineman gets their hands on you and can knock you off your path up to where you're going really fast. And so the biggest thing for us that I've ever seen is kids just have to trust their training and then trust their steps and trust their path. You will run into somebody. Don't go chase. Don't go chase a linebacker. Don't go chase a safety, especially if you're a 6'2", 230-pound tackle. Don't go chase a safety because guess what? You're not going to catch him. If you were going to catch the safety, you would have the ball in your hands. You're not going to catch him. And so you have to trust and do these steps exactly right to give yourself the best chance to get us blocked up. And if you get us blocked up, I'll buy you a Coke or something after the game, or I've bought a kid a Blizzard before that had a really good game because he trusts what we were telling him. And I married one kid, and he's like, Coach, it worked. I was like, yeah, I know it works. I've seen it work a bunch of times. He's like, no, you told me to do this, and man, I got there, and the guy was there, And I was like, yeah, no, I know, I've been doing this for 20 years, and so but when you do see a kid like that, kind of the light bulb moment click on for a kid, it's really fun when they're like, oh no, that worked. Yeah, no, that's why we do it. 10-20 minutes a day, guy.
Okay. And now besides Harding, so when I think triple three schools come to my mind right now. No, four. Like obviously Air Force, like that's the common thing. Harding, obviously. I mean, you just win a national title and rush for 6,000 yards. And let's be honest, they have a clinic every year. They're kind of the Eastern New Mexico, Kelly Lee, and Terry Harrison at Friends are kind of the four I look at. Is there anybody else you kind of look at or that you talk to that runs it, to just kind of compare and contrast notes, do research and so forth each year?
Being in the flexbone community, like we kind of got into a big Twitter battle with people when Coach Simmons said the flexbone is really cool if you want to win, and then he got just hammered by anybody else. And then I saw one guy tweet out said the flexbone community isn't very big, but they will defend each other to the death. They don't even have to know each other. And so you learn a bunch of schools that way when you see somebody attack a flexbone school. And so, like I told our old line coach, he's big. He loves the flexbone. He was a spread guy in college. He was a spread guy in high school, and he's been working with us for a while. And he ran it before in schools in Arkansas. And I said, man, dude, I picked up like 50 Twitter follows just by defending Coach Simmons. He's like, oh, me too, man. I got 100. And he actually graduated from Harding, but back when they were running Tony Franklin stuff. And so, man, he was just so fired up when Harding won the national championship. But so I found schools that way through Iowa and Michigan and Ohio and Kansas that are flexbone schools. But as far as like just straight video, no, man. All my stuff and all my learning has just been really random off of Twitter of just finding people that run the flexbone. And if you ask me to name any of them, I really can't without going back and looking through my phone because my memory's not the greatest anymore. But the other thing that I've learned, and when we first started running the flexbone, and we were really good at it, and we were having a lot of success, and I got kind of like, oh, well, you have to do it this way. and this is the way we were taught to, and we're having success, so you have to do it this way. So I would say this: don't discredit schools that run the option out of the gun. As you know, don't do that, because like Kansas, I watched them, and I was watching them play. I think it was Texas during the season. I said they just ran mid triple out of the gun, out of gun two back, and I started watching. I was like, they are running mid triple out of the gun two back, and they ran it really well. So just because they're not a flexbone school, don't if somebody's running the option, watch it what they're doing, and you might learn some stuff. Because I said, there's no way you can run mid triple out of the gun. It just won't hit as fast. The pitch is going to be way too wide. Because I've watched some teams try to do it that weren't very good at it, and they're pitching it to a kid 9 yards back off the line of scrimmage, and I'm just like, that guy's got to run 10 yards to gain a yard. And then I started watching these other schools going, whoa, hey, that was pretty good. Kennesaw, I got a lot of film on Kennesaw from the last couple of years, and they do a lot of really good stuff formational wise. And we started to incorporate some of that this year as well too. And so, I've never understood this saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat, because I've never tried to skin a cat. But why anybody would want to skin a cat, I don't know why. But there is more than one way to skin a cat. So at one point in time, when they took the wishbone guys and moved them up to the line of scrimmage, I'm sure there was a bunch of old wishbone coaches going, that'll never work. That's stupid. Why would you do that? Well, I was one of those flexbone guys when people started running the pistol flex option out of the pistol and 3 yards deep, going, that's so stupid. Why would you do that? And now I've watched a lot of schools going, hey, they might be onto something. And so we actually did have a gun package, and for the first time in 12 years, we took a snap from not under the center. And I remember my quarterback, who's going to Louisiana Tech, play linebacker, was a great option quarterback for us this year. Though he's like, hey, that gun stuff's pretty cool. And he'd been a 4-year starter for us, and he was a senior in high school before he took a snap out of the gun. And so we started to experiment with the gun stuff. And so we had a gun package this year, and it was very successful. We primarily threw out of it. It just gave Cole we got him off the line of scrimmage a little bit better, and he was, he's a really good athlete. So I got him off the line of scrimmage better to throw the ball and not have to, rely so much on his drop. But then we ran some mid double and some mid triple out of the gun this year, and it was some good stuff. So my advice to you flexbone coaches out there was, just because somebody's in the gun doesn't mean what they're doing isn't as good. So research it and look at it, and hey, if you can come up with something on your own and mess with it in practice and be like, hey, we might be onto something here. Because I remember my dad came and watched us play a game a handful of years ago, and we had a really good slot. And he said, hey, do you ever just take the ball as soon as you snap it and toss it to Kevin from where he's standing? And I said, no. And he goes, you should. He goes, he's really fast, and if you get him the ball, and so we're like, all right, well, let's see how we can block that. And we started running quick pitch out of the flex ball, and we manipulated forth, out of formational wise to get the ball to Kevin. And we had another slot named Junebug, so you can imagine he was pretty quick as well too. So he got the ball to Kevin Junebug quick on the edge, and it was a really good play. So if you see something and you're like, that might work, go down the rabbit hole, and it might work out for you.
Okay. Well, coaches, give Coach a follow on the Twitter or X or whatever it's called by the time this comes out. Like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer Podcast.